Hello everybody and welcome to this last minute tips and tricks video for the English Language Paper 2 exam, which is going to be happening in just a couple of days. I know that a lot of you found the paper 1 tips and tricks video really useful the other day, so I'm hoping that this will go through some tips that will help you solidify your knowledge and understanding of how to answer the questions for paper 2 on Friday. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about timing and highlighters, which I know I did in my video the other night, but if you haven't watched that one, then those key tips are really important for this exam as well. And then what I'm going to do is go through each of the tips I have for each of the questions on the exam for paper 2. So first of all, timing. I recommend that you spend about 10 minutes reading for the exam on Friday. Now, some students have said, well, do I spend that 10 minutes at the very beginning, or do I split that up between the questions? And I think really my answer is you've got to do what works for you. However, I would definitely make sure that you read the questions first in your exam paper, so that when it comes to reading the two sources, you know what you're looking for with regards to your annotations. So read the questions first and then read through your two sources. I would try and read through quickly just to get a broad overview of each of the sources, and then if you want to try and read through again in a little bit more detail and annotate on the second time within that 10 minutes, then that's really good too, so you can get a little bit more in depth with regard to your annotations. But I wouldn't spend any more than 10 minutes on that, because your timing then is going to be constricted for your other questions. So the timing allocation is slightly different for paper 2 than paper 1, and that's because the marks are split slightly differently. So for question 1, which is the true and false one, I would spend a maximum of 5 minutes on that. You probably won't need 5 minutes, but don't go above that. Question 2, which is the summary, I would spend about 10 minutes on. Question 3 is your language one on paper 2, and I'd spend 15 minutes on that. And question 4, which is your comparison one, I'd spend 20 minutes. And then along with your 10 minutes of reading time, that then gives you 45 minutes to spend on your section B writing. With regards to the order of answering the questions, you may wish to do question 5 first. I know a lot of students do benefit from that, because obviously they don't want to feel as though they've run out of time or energy, I suppose, when they get to the end of the reading questions. Some students find it easier if they read through the sources first, because then that gives them ideas for their question 5 response. Again, I wouldn't try and do anything different, hugely different in the exam on Friday. Stick with what you know and what you've done in your mock exams and what you know works well for you. So nothing's really wrong, but just make sure that you don't spend too long on those lower tariff questions at the beginning of the exam paper. Okay, so my next tip is highlighters. So this is really important, and I did mention this for paper 1 as well. My recommendation, and we use this within our department at school, is to take 4 different coloured highlighters in with you, or different coloured pens, and annotate the sources depending on which colour you've allocated to the question. So for example, you might allocate highlighter pink to question 1. So anything that you highlight in pink in the source is then going to be used to answer your question 1. Yellow might be for question 2, obviously, green might be question 3, and blue might be question 4. So that just makes it a little bit easier when it comes to answering the questions to locate the information that's relevant for each of those questions. As I said in the video the other day, don't use those highlighters in your answer though, okay? You can use highlighting to highlight the sources themselves and the questions themselves, but do not highlight your own response, because when it comes to scanning those answer booklets in for the examiners to mark them, sometimes the highlighters can obscure what you've actually written. So make sure you do not highlight your answer itself. Okay, so I'm going to go through each of the questions now, and I've got a little tip for each of them. So for question 1, really, this sounds really simple, but believe it or not, quite a few students, in the panic of the exam, actually shade more than 4 boxes on question 1, okay? It asks you to shade 4 true statements, okay? Now, if you get caught up in the moment and you shade an extra box, the examiner will only take your first 4 ones that you've shaded, and one of those might be the incorrect one, okay? So please double check that you have only shaded 4. If you realise you've made a mistake and you need to tell the examiner that that is not a shaded box, put a big cross through the box, okay? And that will tell the examiner that you do not wish for that one to be marked, okay? So please only shade 4 boxes for question 1. Okay, for question 2, this is the summary question, and students are finding this really difficult, and I think it's because the word summary has been used. Now, the exam board have actually said that they feel that the word summary is not really a good indication of the skills that are required for this question. The key thing with this question is for you to mention what the difference is between the 2 sources, okay, and what is inferred or suggested by the quotes that you've chosen, okay? So it will likely say on Friday, mention there is a difference in this between the 2 sources. Write a summary of those differences, okay? So you write 2 paragraphs and you say in your opening statement, this is different between the 2 sources, okay? Source A states this suggests, whereas source B states this suggests, okay? You don't do language analysis for question 2, okay? You do not do your define, imply, affect. That is not necessary for question 2. So it's literally just what is inferred and suggested, okay? With the difference mentioned as well, and it's 2 paragraphs, okay? Hopefully that clears up question 2. Question 3 is your language question on paper 2, okay? This is the same as what you were essentially being asked on paper 1, but it's worth a few more marks, okay? Now, the key to this question is the examiners want you to mention the effects of the language features. They're not overly fussed about feature spotting or picking out linguistic devices, okay? What they want you to do is choose words and phrases which answer the question and then comment on the effect that their choice of language has had on the reader, okay? So if you do happen to pick out a simile, the examiner does not want to know the effect of a simile. The examiner wants to know what the effect is of the words in that quote that you've chosen, okay? And question 3, you must define, imply, affect, okay? So define what the words mean, mention what is implied and suggested by those words, and also consider the effects. This is really key to this question, okay? So practice define, imply, affect for this question, right? Question 4 is your biggest one on the reading section, and this is the comparison, and they will ask you to compare writers' perspectives. Now, all that means is what a writer thinks and feels about something. So you have got to read between the lines and you've got to figure out what the writer thinks or feels about a certain topic, okay? Now, the exam board this week have said to the examiners that the most important thing to note within this is to look for words and phrases that answer the question, inferences, and not necessarily linguistic features or structural features. abstract nouns were mentioned, okay, as being a bit of a buzz phrase, okay. Now I have a video on my channel which you can watch, which goes through what abstract nouns are, okay. But essentially what we're talking about is emotions, okay. So I think what the exam board are getting at is they want you to figure out the emotions of the writer, and you can work out the emotions and therefore the thoughts and feelings of a writer by picking out abstract nouns that are used, okay. So I would really revise abstract nouns, and I would focus on the thoughts and feelings of the writer. There is less of a focus on the comparison, but you do need to use comparative words and phrases, okay? So think about your comparative discourse markers, whereas on the other hand, in addition to, furthermore, in contrast to, all of these are really important, okay? And also the word both, okay? So if you've got a similarity between the two sources, both sources demonstrate this, or both writers have this thought and feeling, okay? So really focus on your comparative discourse markers and abstract nouns for this question. Okay, so question 5. Now I've got loads of videos on my channel for question 5 that go through structure, format, how to structure an argument, what is persuasive writing. I've got loads on language, the technique of read my rules, just an easy way to remember lots of linguistic devices. But the biggest thing that I'm getting at the moment is this question from students and teachers, and that's what is a blog? Okay, because actually in the initial literature from the exam board, blog wasn't mentioned, but since then blogs have been mentioned in some examining material. So what I wanted to do is explain to you what a blog is, and actually it's really simple. It is an online web log, okay? It's written by a person, okay, and it's normally kind of about a personal subject or something that they're hugely interested in, okay? It is always written in the style of an article. So when it comes to the exam, if you get the format of a blog, you need to write in the style of an article. So you need a headline and a subheading, okay? After that, you can use bullet points, okay? But you're just using body paragraphs. It has to have a headline and a subheading, and you are ticking the box for the format for a blog, okay? So do not get phased if that comes up on Friday, because you just need to remember the structure of a news article, okay? Now, this free download is available on my website, aishaexams.wordpress.com, and it just gives you an overview of the structure of each of the formats that you could be asked to write. Now, note that blog isn't listed on here, and that is because I wrote this before blog was even mentioned, but that would fit into the purple rectangle, okay? So you think of it as an article or a leaflet, your headline, your subheadline, your introduction, and then your paragraphs and your conclusion, okay? So you've got each format on there that you could be asked to write. And then also you've got read my rules listed at the bottom. Again, you can go through the video on read my rules. I think it's called language analysis question 3, okay? And that's one of my, I think it was one of my first videos that I popped on the channel back in the day. I think it was 2014. So have a look through that if you want an easy way of remembering some techniques. And my final tip is the easy-peasy structure for this question. Now, I know that obviously that gives you a structure for each of those types, but in the exam it's very easy to get, I suppose, frustrated and bogged down with all the information that you're given and confused about how to structure your answer. So, if all else fails, my easy-peasy structure, which comes from my head of department, and she's amazing, she came up with this and we think it's wonderful. So it fits every single type of format that you will be asked to write. And the way it works is you always start your answer with a rhetorical question. So if you are asked to write an article or a leaflet or a blog, then the rhetorical question is your headline. Okay, if you are asked to write a letter or an essay, it's your opening sentence. And if you're asked to write a speech, then it's after addressing your audience. Okay, so you say, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and then you use your rhetorical question. Okay, so you always use that. Now, the reason why we do that is because immediately you are ticking the box in the mark scheme for a one-sentence paragraph, and you're ticking the box for use of a linguistic device, and you're ticking the box for use of a question mark. So it's a lovely, lovely introduction to your answer. Then what you can do is you state whether you agree or disagree with the statement that is given, because you will be given a statement and you have to say what your point of view is on it. Okay? Then you say what the reasons are for that. Okay, so you use a colon to start a bullet point list, and then you list your reasons, okay, in brief, and use semicolons in that list, okay, ending with a full stop. So again, we are ticking the mark for a linguistic feature listing, and we're also ticking the mark scheme for use of a colon, semicolons. Okay, this is within the first section of your answer. Then what you do is you write your body paragraphs. So essentially you take each of your reasons and you elaborate on those ideas. You obviously want to offer the alternative viewpoint. You might want to just hint at that, and then you kind of almost rubbish their idea. You say that it's complete nonsense and the reason is this, and then that's when you use your anecdotal experience, your facts, your statistics, your professionals' opinions to back up what you're saying, and you do that in your body paragraphs, okay? Then you come to your conclusion, and your conclusion is a repetition of the ideas from the beginning. At that point, it might be pertinent to answer the rhetorical question at the beginning, or rephrase that rhetorical question so it's slightly different, okay, so that you're leaving a question in your reader's mind at the very end of your answer. Throughout this answer, you're thinking about including 5 different types of punctuation, which you likely will have done if you followed the easy-peasy structure, and you're also thinking about including 5 or more types of linguistic devices, okay? So this easy-peasy structure works for every single format. So if you're stuck in the exam, remember this, okay? Rhetorical question, bullet point list, body paragraphs, conclusion, okay? So that is my video on my last minute tips for paper 2. I hope that each of them have proved useful. I really wish you the very, very best of luck for paper 2 on Friday. I've had loads of comments thanking me, and I want to do a big shout out to all of those people that have taken the time to comment on the videos. I can't do it individually because I've had so many, but it really does make a difference hearing that the videos do help. That is the entire reason why I do it. Okay, because I know that there's loads of students out there that often fret at home when they're on their own away from the teachers and just need that extra little bit of reassurance just before the exam. So thank you ever so much for your lovely comments. I hope the videos have helped, and if this video has helped, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for listening. You can tweet me at AQA Exams if you've got any questions. I will stay online for as long as I can the night before the exam. Wishing you the very best of luck, and I'll speak to you soon.